first of all, as an introduction, welcome, Graham. Thank you very much for taking your time over the weekend to come and speak with us.
No worries.
This is, so for everybody, Graham is the COO of Go Train Limited, and I've known Graham for a very long time. And Graham and myself, we were actually Shanthika, did you want to show this now? Well, let's just surprise Graham a little bit. If you remember, we actually no, it's nothing like that. It's not that bad. No. If you remember, well, for everyone else, Graham and myself were actually part of Medway Youth Trust, and Graham instructed me to, or encouraged me to actually be a non-exec for the board, and that's where I learned all of my skills really as a non-exec. And this all started off from Graham, and we first sort of touched base, believe it or not, it was in 2011. That's when we first made contact. I know, long time ago.
I was young then.
So was I must have just turned 20 or something. That's maybe what it was.
Something like
but we actually won Charity of the Year, and Graham did an amazing job for them. And we'll go through kind of like voluntary work, charity work, how you can really utilize your skills later on as well, because I think it's really important for people to understand that any skills that you have, there are companies out there or charities out there which will really can really benefit from this. But I won't go into it too much, just in case I'm encroaching on your presentation in any way.
Okay, you're okay.
Over to you, Graham. Thank you.
Okay, so just my intention is going to just kind of talk for sort of 15 plus minutes or something like that. Introduce myself to you, and then talk about a few things that we are seeing currently kind of in the jobs market and training and skills. And then really just kind of, if there are any questions, more than happy to kind of pick them up. And that's now good. So I'm just going to kind of introduce myself to you through 4 pictures, if that's okay. Back in the days when I did have hair and I was young, then my career started out in the City of London, and I was an insurance broker working with global corporate clients and managing and arranging and broking their insurances. And that was pretty much all kinds of insurance, from their liability and kind of professional indemnity through to what was called product guarantee. We had a lot of engineering businesses, aviation, marine, etc. So that was kind of a long time ago for me, but actually kind of, it was a good career, something that was really enjoyable, and if it doesn't sound too complacent, was quite good at. And very much, I think one of the things that kind of fed the rest of my career is that intermediary role, sitting between our corporate clients and the insurance market. However, there was a moment when I was going to a client meeting, and for those of you that don't know London very well, there was a kind of a large kind of corporate development out to the east side of London, and the tower you see in the background of the second picture is Canary Wharf. And as I was on the train to a client meeting going to that, and it was a very new back in the late 1980s, I was looking at the flats, and the people who lived in those flats weren't necessarily going to get the jobs in those new skyscrapers and the new offices. And I just had a bit of a moment, and I don't really know why. I've never kind of looked back on it or regretted it or questioned it. But I decided that I wanted to work with the people who lived in the flats rather than the people who worked in the offices. And so I stopped insurance broking, and I started to work for a London-wide young people's charity. And in many respects, I took a huge pay cut to those kind of things when you leave a good career in the city, but it started to feel very real. And so that's kind of something that, even though that's now over 30 years ago for me, is still something that, well, one particular train journey is something I look back on as quite pivotal in my career. So I guess I spent the next kind of 25 years working for young people, and in all sorts of lives. So in education and their skills and trying to get young people into work, but equally at the other end with young people in prison, young people on the edge of crime, young people with significant challenges in their lives at home, safeguarding, welfare, family issues, young people in trouble, and young people who cause trouble. And if I look back over that 30-year career, in and out of prisons and all those kind of things. I think I've probably only ever met 3 young people in my whole life who I'm not quite sure there was any necessarily a solution for. So there's an element about me which is kind of an eternal optimist. I tend to see the strengths in people and the good in people and the benefits in people. And I think any other challenges that are going on in their lives are very much, you can deal with those with the right resource, with the right time and the right effort. And my career, I guess, over that kind of 30-year period, if you took me back to kind of the late 1980s, early 1990s, I believe that you had to kind of be as close to a young person as possible to make that transformational difference in their life. And maybe it's age, or maybe it's career, maybe it's wisdom, or maybe it's just tiredness. But as I've got older, I've kind of also accepted and realized that you can make quite transformational change for people the further you get away from their lives, by looking at lives in a very different way. And now, as a Chief Operating Officer at a company called GoTrain, and I'll come on to GoTrain in a couple of minutes, very much based around education, skills and training, this time now working with adults. So we work with young people who are 18 to 65, are a little bit older, people who are looking to get into work, change career, progress in their career. If I reflect all of the way back to insurance broking and all the way through the last kind of 30, 35 years, I think these things have been absolutely common in all of those roles. Whether it was insurance broking, working with a young person, or running a charity, or being the COO of a training company, having a shared vision, everybody kind of rooted. And I think one of the reasons, sorry, I should stop. One of the reasons I kind of identified these 5 things as well is because it struck me that all of these 5 things are absolutely relevant to a hackathon. And I don't think, therefore, the skills that you're using over this weekend are any different to the skills that I've developed over the last 30 years, which is why things like this hackathon are so important, I think. So the first is about a shared vision. It's about a group of people, whether that's a team of 7 at a hackathon, or whether it's a charity or a company of 200 or 50,000 employees. It's about having that shared vision, real clarity about what are we trying to achieve, how are we trying to achieve it. The second part, the people, perhaps that's obvious, but for me, and actually one of the things I remember was a young person about a decade ago, and I said to her, what is it about our charity that you think we get right? And she just looked at me, I think she was about 15 or something, and she said, Graham, you always seem to have the right people in the right place with the right skills at the right time. Is that deliberate? And I obviously said yes, but I'm sure some of that was an accident. But absolutely fundamental, whether it's a project, whether it's a hackathon, or whether it's an organization, it's absolutely about the right skills in the right people at the right time. I think the third part, and again, very relevant to you this weekend, but in every part of my career, it's very much around test, try it, learn, fail quickly, adapt, test and learn again, and keep going. One of the weaknesses of the charity sector in the UK is very often we receive funding that might be a 4-year funding grant, but you have to devise your program at the beginning of the 4-year period and then deliver it for 4 years. And there's something really inherently weak about that, I think. So the kind of the test and fail quickly, learn, adapt, change, and keep going, and keep that cycle iterative is hugely important. The next one for me is data as insight. And again, I think that's a personal journey. Very much, if I go back a decade, I was using data to report. Process that we went through in my last organization was about using data analytics to see if we could uncover the real fundamental barriers that were stopping young people progress from school into work. And that is about a 12-month partnership with IBM we undertook. It was an analytics of structured and unstructured data, created data dictionaries, of which we were kind of incredibly data rich company. And we spent around £1 million less and had about a 56% improvement on our outcomes working with 16-year-old teenagers leaving school. And ever since that one particular kind of journey, it was kind of a tough project, but ever since that, have really kind of placed premium on using data to inform strategy and that shared vision in that first part of the circle. And then lastly, if you've got the right people in the right place at the right time with the right skills, and you have that vision, you're willing to fail quickly, and you use data really appropriately as insight, it's just about maintaining that focus and grafting through even when some of those challenges look immense. So whatever type that is, if I was thinking around broking the insurance of a company that had £100 million worth of insurance premiums, or whether that was a young person that was thinking about committing suicide, or whether it was kind of a young person trying to get out of a gang or something like that, whatever that problem is, then it's just clearly about having that relentless focus on that particular challenge. So now, last 3 years, I've been the Chief Operating Officer at a company called GoTrain. We spend around £12 million a year of UK government money providing free training to adults, either to get adults from unemployment and into work, or to help people reskill or develop their careers when they're already working. We work across the country, and that's through some online training, but also we have 16 skills centres in different parts of the country in England. This slide is really, really busy, so please don't read it. Sarah said that this is being recorded, so there'll be another chance to do that. But I just kind of wanted to give a sense of how we think as a company, as opposed to necessarily what we do. So very much, if you kind of just really probably focus on the top row, really, we think of our work in terms of intent. So very much that shared vision goal that I touched on just now. And therefore you can see, for example, in that column, we make sure that the programs and the training we do are for jobs that exist, not just for things that people would like to do. This is fundamentally about getting people into work or people to develop their careers. So we work very closely with local and economic regional agencies, with government, and to make sure that our programs fit. We then deliver education, skills and training. And then our impact is around, yes, of course, we want people to gain qualifications, but actually we talk around what's called positive destinations. So if you are out of work and you're trying to get into work, have you now got a job? If you haven't, perhaps we didn't do something right with you. If you wanted to develop your career, perhaps we didn't do something right if at the end of our training, you haven't been able to develop your career. So we're really kind of interested in people making progress from the point at which they start, not just receiving a qualification for the sake of it. I just want to kind of touch a little bit more. Right at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's kind of 5 black boxes. And next to English, maths and digital skills, there's something that calls 21st century skills. And I just kind of want to touch on that and use some really current labour market data from London, just to give you an illustration of to why we think that's important. The World Economic Forum sets out, I think it's 16 or 19, what they call 21st century skills. And within our organisation, we've identified these as being the most important that employers, we talk to employers all the time when we're creating opportunities for people. And these are the skills that employers are telling us that they look for all the time. On the left, what we call those foundational literacies, literacy, numeracy and digital literacy, of course. But actually, if you look at the competencies and the character, perhaps the things that employers start to test in interview, look for in candidates, and the kind of skills that really, again, you can actually hone very strongly, I think, with things like hackathons, or as Sarah just said earlier, in terms of voluntary work and charity work and other opportunities like that. But employers constantly telling us they're looking for the ability for people to communicate with those interpersonal skills, problem solving, innovation, being able to lead, make decisions. And then in terms of character, that sense of grit, curiosity, feeling good about oneself, self-esteem, motivation, so willing to try new opportunities. And then, of course, every employer wants somebody to turn up on time and start on time. But I just want to kind of illustrate those things. Just before, about an hour ago, we use a data platform that uses government data, but also scrapes data from pretty much every recruitment site in the country. It overlays that with kind of economic data locally and nationally. And so I just looked at 3 job roles advertised in London and in December, so in the last 30 days. So I looked at data analyst posts, warehouse operative as something completely different, and software developer posts. In terms of unique job postings, there were 6,704 data analyst job postings for jobs in London in the last 30 days. And I don't need to go through those numbers, but you can see just under 4,000 for warehouse operative and just under 28,000 for software developer. The posting intensity is how many times were each post advertised, either in newspapers or in recruitment agency sites. And you can see that the data analyst 7 posts for every 1 job, 5 for the warehouse operative, in other words, the simplest to recruit to, and the software developer, the most difficult of those 3 that I randomly picked to recruit to. Each job was advertised, posted 8 times. But the main thing I wanted to highlight, coming back to those 21st century skills and the other things that employers are looking for, when you sort and you analyze all of the job vacancies and the job postings by clearly the hard skills, and I haven't focused on the hard skills because clearly these are very different jobs, but the soft skills that the employers are looking for in their job descriptions and in their adverts for these particular jobs in the last 30 days, there's a lot of similarity, considering the first 2 columns. One's a data analyst, and the average salary was pushing up into the high £80,000 as an average in December, to a warehouse operative, which is really just about moving things around the warehouse for companies like Amazon or other logistic companies. But communication was the top ranked soft skill every single job post had. Management, you can see I've highlighted those in kind of the pale blue, made the top 6 skills that employers look for in all of those roles. Integration for 2 of them, innovation for 2 of them, leadership were touched on earlier. So I think all I'm trying to kind of get out here really is, regardless of the post or the job that we think we want to do and we're good at, perhaps we're already in, there are some real constant skills that employers are looking for, whether that's me applying for a job, any of you, Sarah, or anybody else applying for the job. Then there are some real constant skills, soft skills, that we always need to take responsibility for developing. We develop those through hackathons, through voluntary work, through our own work experience, but we also develop them, I think, in my experience, if we have a deliberate purpose to try to develop them. It's very, very often we can focus on our hard skills and just keeping our head down at work perhaps, or showing ambition and trying to develop our careers. But I think the more that we think about, how do I develop my communication skills? All employers want that. How do I develop my management skills? Pretty much all employers are looking for that. How do I develop my leadership skills, etc.? And I just think we have to take that personal responsibility to try to develop those soft skills. So when I come back to what does GoTrain do in terms of the implementation of our courses, that middle chunk of within the diagram, we try to embed those skills in everything that we teach, because they're that important, because that's something that every single employer looks for. So if we train somebody, for example, to become a warehouse operative, we don't just make sure they have a warehouse qualification, we make sure we have the skills that the employers are looking for in their warehouse operatives. And that way that our learners get to the front of the queue, if you like. In terms of how do we work, we have twofold. Very often we work with an employer to say, have you got vacancies? If you have, then we can provide the training for you, for your candidates. So when they come to you for a job, they've already had the training that you have helped us to develop. So that many employers really value that, because it gives them a chance to inform our curriculum, our teaching, the content. And if, for example, pick a course, if we were teaching learners around customer service skills, and one of the sessions is around understanding a mission statement and how that applies to business, we would use the company's mission statement, for example, who have got the jobs being advertised. So what that means is that when we have, when those people then go for their guaranteed interview, about 9 out of 10 of them get a job. So many employers kind of enjoy working with us, and we work with companies such as large corporates such as Amazon or West Midlands Police, London Police. I'm trying to think of others offhand. The restaurant group, which owns about 28 restaurant brands across the UK, but we equally work with very small and independent companies. So I just think the main important thing I wanted to try to pick out of all of that, other than introduce myself and to say hi to everybody, is just really focus on your own soft skills and use opportunities like this hackathon to do that. I'm going to shut up, and I'm really happy if there's any questions.
Hi, Graham. That was yeah, brilliant. Thank you. You talking kind of takes me back to when we first met as well. Your calm, collective voice actually keeps my feet on the ground. So it's really good that you've joined me again as well. I think we need to keep in touch more often, for sure. I think Yeah, I think from the soft skills is a real key thing that I've picked up on, and even, you know, regardless of industry sector, the data that's being used and how that's being used to help businesses. And I think with the hackathon that we've got today, let's ask the guys. So how many of you actually would have thought that those top skills would have come through as prominent as they did? Can I have a show of hands, or a yes or a no, thumbs up, thumbs down for some people? Yeah, I think this is where as I said, hackathons really do change the way in which people recruit and can help. And I think there's the couple of things that you mentioned, Graham, about the shared vision, people learning, testing and adapting, and then going through onto utilising that data, that insight and the relentless. I think that's really important about how it evolves, or how it's consistent within any industry sector. If you were to give advice to the people who are here today about how to really try and hone in on their skills to make sure that they understand that of a business going forward, if they were to do research for an interview, for instance, is there any advice that you could give these guys?
In terms of soft skills or generally?
Yeah, well, yeah, technical skills. I think you can teach anybody technical skills through education, academia, you know, working off a mentor or a peer. But in terms of, especially, I would say the soft skills, because that's where, you know, people do shine out or shine through.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's good point. I think one of the things that we see a lot is, I'm trying to think of how to articulate it. Many times, whether it would be young people or adults, find it very difficult to reflect and to place value on the skills that they've got, because they don't recognize that they've got them. Mm-hmm. And they don't recognize how transferable some of those skills are. And I guess that shows itself because people often, they think in terms of what they do and what they've done and what they can do and what they want to do, not necessarily how they did it, or the motivation as to why. And so it would be really tempting, for example, at the end of this particular weekend, to look at the output of your team's work, and there'd be absolute value in doing that, and you definitely should. But most people will then, at that point, they pause and they stop and they walk away. They don't think, and how did I do that? And perhaps in a team of 7 or 8, for example, you have a disagreement about something over this weekend, and I'm sure you will have, and that's completely usual in business as well. But actually, how many of you might reflect on, how did I manage that argument? How did I manage that disagreement? Did I back down? Did I listen? Did I step forward? Did I keep pushing? Did I wait until she or he stopped talking? Might I have done that differently? Should I have done that differently? What would have happened if I'd done that differently? And actually, most people don't necessarily reflect on their own experiences like that. And one of the things in my previous organization, the organization where I met Sarah, we introduced a CPD program for every staff, where we gave every single member of staff a reflective journal and asked them to keep that. And if I'm honest, I remember at the staff meeting when I told everybody we were going to do that, I think I had absolutely no interest at all, no excitement. And I think probably a lot of resentment, because everybody saw that now as a new piece of work I was giving them all. A year later, and I made them take that to their one-to-ones with their manager. So if they went on the training course, they reflected on not just what they learned, but actually how, you know, how was the presenter? How was it a well-organized day? Who did you sit next to? So I set myself a personal challenge. For example, I had one of my senior managers. I've got a theory that if you go into a large room of 300 people, the person, if you're brave enough to go and say hello to people without knowing people, the people that you'll go to and say hello to, they look like you. If I walked into a room, I can guarantee that people who are probably in their late 40s, early 50s, wear glasses and have got no hair, at some point will come up and say hello to me, just because people never migrate to the people that look a little bit like them. And so I would then be encouraging our staff, for example, in their reflective journals, make a difference. I want you to go and talk and shake hands with 5 people. I had a particular senior manager, female, She found it very difficult to walk up to a man in that kind of event environment and go, "Hi, my name is X, and what you're doing." She found it really difficult. So we made that one of her goals in her reflective journal to do that. And actually that got easier and easier. The first time was uncomfortable, and a few times later on, it was absolutely normal. But it was about taking the opportunity to reflect on my strengths and my weaknesses, and what am I going to do about those things that I think I'm less strong in? What am I going to do about that? Am I going to do anything about that? Do I recognize them? It can be uncomfortable. Ask friends, ask colleagues. If you're at uni or at school, ask another student. What are my strengths? What am I good at? Am I shy? Am I confident? When do I step forward? When do I step back? How do I think? And actually, sometimes just keep that reflective nature. Write it down, I think, is a great way, because when you do get interviews, you can just flick back through the pages. It helps you remember something you can talk about in an interview, perhaps. But don't be shy to ask. I think for me, that's where character grows a little bit, when we're willing to face the things that we're not necessarily good at. It can be uncomfortable, but it's definitely worth doing. And I'm looking at the screens, and you're all nicely young. So you've got great long careers ahead of you. You've got plenty of time. I can't change now. I'm far too old.
You're all about the same age as me, so we're all good. We're all in this together.
When I said you're all nicely young, I wasn't looking at Sarah's picture anymore. I was looking at everybody else. But you've got that time, and it can be hard for younger people at early stages of careers to do it, I think. But actually, the ones that stand out in interviews and the ones whose careers progress within businesses are those who are the most self-aware. Most self-aware. But self-awareness is something either you learn through a painful journey, because people tell you and what they think, or because you kind of become that reflective individual yourself. So one practical example. I used to, as part of their own development, I had probably every manager upwards, I encouraged to go and join things like school governing bodies, charity governing bodies, sit in other forums and other environments, but not just sit in the meeting. Come back, write in your reflective journal. What was the chair like? What was the agenda like? Was it well structured? Was it well timed? Did it lead to action, or was it just a place to talk? Reflect on those things, because if you're going to chair a meeting next month, what kind of chair are you going to be? And take the opportunity to kind of look, absorb, reflect, write it down.
I think
I still do. I'm 54 and I still keep a reflective journal, because I'm a long way from being brilliant at stuff, but I know what I'm not good at, and I'll keep trying.
Yeah, I am. The first time I ever gave a presentation on an auditorium or to an auditorium was Graham's advice to me back in, must have been around about 2012. And I've been speaking, of managers, and as you guys know, my background, working for the FTSE 500 organisations in the city, I was absolutely petrified. And Graham just saying, everyone is normal. And this is why in our hackathons, we do encourage you to have multi-leveled, multi-skilled people within your team. Make sure that you have, cross-border, multicultural, you learn from each other. And that was one of the key things I actually learned from that experience. And if it wasn't for Graham, I wouldn't be able to be speaking with you guys now. Even just 8 years on, 9 years on. I'm not on any social media. I don't put myself out there. But this is something, if you really truly believe in something, which is again what Graham's mentioned about your vision of what you genuinely believe in, then you have the courage to do this. And I think that's a great advice. And I've experienced that firsthand as well, from Graham's experience, that it absolutely works. Manel, she's actually not online today, I don't think, at the moment. She'll be online this evening. She's doing a night shift for us. But one of her key things, which is actually really cool, and I hope that the guys who are joining us at the moment, her key word is reflection. So after every hackathon, we reflect on how can we do things better, etc. And it's just personal growth. And the key of the 21st century skills that you've highlighted, absolutely, is for my mind, having worked in industries, having recruited for people, that's key. And you've got to understand that, hackathons, or even environments similar to this, it may not be a hackathon, but even a community group, volunteering, anything like this, upskills you. It 100% upskills you. It gives you something to talk to employers about that other people don't do. You know, it makes you stand out. It gives you additional skills. It gives you additional perspective of how to deal with things. And I don't know if anybody else agrees with that. I hope that you do. Does anybody have any questions for Graham? I think some popped up. Some popped up. Let me have a look. Okay, so it did actually mention in terms of somebody's just messaged on the WhatsApp group. It says about the mission statement, about how to identify that for an organisation, how to utilise that when going for a job interview. Any advice on that one, Graham?
Yep. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I've just made a mistake of opening up too many windows there. Sorry about that. Okay. See, that will be one of my reflections, is some Zoom CPD. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, clearly, it's very hard now to find an organisation that doesn't have something on its website around its mission, its vision, its values. Depending on the role, the level of the role. You can clearly kind of go much further. And some organizations now, particularly those that use digitized application processes, which it can be more difficult to get yourself across sometimes. Again, those kind of digitized processes where you kind of fill in a form, you don't even get a chance to send as a CV, perhaps. Yeah. Again, the algorithm's looking for keywords. So I've never had, whether this is the right thing to say, I don't know. I've never really had kind of a much of a rocket science view about the world. If I go back to insurance broking, actually, if I go back to charity funding and charity bid writing, I used to read, what does the funder want to fund? What are the things that the funder's interested in? And then I would make sure that all of my words were in the sentences in my bid form and my bidding and my grant applications. And more often than not, the funders would say, we feel there's a really strong connection between what your organization wants to do and what we're about. And you go, really? That's a shock, isn't it? Because I've pretty much used your words back to you. And therefore they look very familiar and they feel very familiar. So I would always encourage people to do that. I mean, I doubt there's many employers now that don't say as one of their first 1 or 2 questions, what do you know about our company and why do you want to be here? Mm-hmm. So clearly you'd want to understand what the mission is and the value. Depending on the role and the seniority, you might want to go back and look at where they've lodged things like corporate accounts. Then you can see their financial performance and where they're spending the priorities, the countries where they're active in the world, etc. But pretty much most companies have got that sorted. Follow companies. Again, if we're saying thank you to each other, then one of the things Sarah did for me probably a few years ago now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, was I changed the way that I use LinkedIn on the back of a conversation with Sarah, because prior to then I had an account. I wasn't really using it. I had some nonsense up there. But actually I'm now really choosy who I follow. I follow companies. I follow kind of discussions. I'm in groups and I'm in those kind of debates. And that all informs my own reflection. I'll learn from one of these questions today. I'll learn from doing this and I'll think about that. But equally, I use LinkedIn a lot. One of the first things I said to my daughter is doing studying at uni at the moment. She's stuff that I don't understand, but it's kind of aeronautical and astronautical engineering. So I definitely am no use to helping her. But one of the first things I said is, as a kind of a young woman trying to get into that kind of sector and that kind of space, join LinkedIn, make that clear. And actually, she's kind of linked in with women in business. There's women in engineers, women who want to kind of get into kind of space science and Formula One and things like the aeronautic elements of car design. And actually, there's been a tremendous offer of help. So when she had one university project, she posted an article to her linked her networks. They all came back with business intelligence and business insights she wouldn't have had. But that's just a tool. She wouldn't have done that if I hadn't have been her dad, and I wouldn't have suggested it if Sarah hadn't have told me 6, 7 years ago how you can derive much more benefit from LinkedIn. So I think there's stuff like that you can do. If you're interested in working for a particular company in the future, follow them now. Find out who their recruiters are, because they'll be on LinkedIn. Find out what they're talking about. Find out what their staff post. And I think those kind of things you can do as part of your long-term ambitions and your own preparation.
Perfect. I think somebody was asking a question or going to ask a question. Anybody come up with that one?
Say it rather than type it, so I don't have to open up the chat thing again.
Yeah. Anybody want to shout out and do a voice? Say a voice?
Nope. There was one in the chat, wasn't there? Was that?
There was, yeah. I've got to just scroll up on myself as well.
There's one at the bottom that said, at what point, how do you explain your strength and weakness? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that, at what point in an interview, do you mean? Or is that what point generally? What does that specifically relate to, whoever that is?
Don't be shy. We're all friends. You can all come back.
Definitely don't be shy.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Good evening, ma'am. Myself, Kini Harika.
Hi.
Hello.
Ma'am, you are the founder of Hackathon,
Yes.
right? And I want to ask that who inspired you in this, and what is your main motto to create this, and what is the main type of organization to go through this, ma'am?
For this particular hackathon or hackathons in general?
Yes, ma'am.
So was that question for all hackathons or just this hackathon?
For all hackathon, ma'am. You are the founder, no, ma'am. You are the CEO of the hackathon. I want to know that what is your inspiration for this, and who inspired you this?
I'll be honest. It's that one of the chaps that inspired me is actually here and has just given us a speech. Graham opened up my mind when Graham, I had a recruitment company. I've set up multiple companies in the past. I had a recruitment company, and I wanted to give something back from some of the profit share that we had as a business, and I wanted to make sure that it went to a good cause, but I didn't necessarily know which charity to go give support to, etc. And I didn't necessarily want to go to one of the big companies or one of the big charities. I wanted it to be more local, and that's where I met Graham. And after a year or so, Graham invited me to be part of his board of directors or trustees, should I say, the non-exec board. And I learned so much, and it opened up my eyes. I was, having worked in the city, you can kind of just have your blinkers on. You're on automatic pilot a lot of the time, and days pass you by, and you forget actually that there are people out there that make a real difference to people's lives, and they think outside the box. And I experienced that at Medway Youth Trust, which is where Graham and myself worked or collaborated with. And that was really the start of it. That was where I just wanted to absorb more and more, and outside of my comfort zone. I never knew anything about governance. I didn't really know anything about the rules and regulations of the public sector, for instance, and how much political power makes a difference on this. Funding, bid writing, all of this. We just went out one business and brought it back, and that was it. And when you learn something new that you just don't know about, it kind of excites you. Well, from my perspective, it excites me. And then that allowed me to go to and attend, like Graham mentioned, I would never have gone necessarily to a lot of conferences, or if I went to conferences, I would have actually just sat there, listened, and walked back and walked away and thought, oh, that was quite a good speech. And it was really from the opportunities that Medway Youth Trust gave me that I actually went up to people, like Graham's mentioned about his staff. I actually went up to people and asked them questions, asked them, what their backgrounds, wanted to find out more, just inquisitive more than anything else. And then that's how I started attending hackathons, just wanting to meet other people, wanting to hear their stories, and just realizing so much great ideas and innovation comes out of it when you bring a collative pool together from all backgrounds. There's great things that can happen, and that's what inspired me. And I'm really fortunate that we host different hackathons. You know, we've set this up in our program so that we are constantly expanding our exposure to different industry sectors, to different geographical groups. And that's what's exciting. That's where you just know that you're becoming more worldly. Your knowledge is increasing. And when you meet exceptional people with a similar kind of mindset, then that's just a natural adrenaline. And that's really what inspires me. So it's actually the time for volunteering that got through this, and being willing and just giving up my time for a few hours a week or a few hours a month, like you guys are doing this for a weekend. It made a big difference, but it also really enhanced my career. It really made me a better person when I was consulting with other businesses. It helped me to understand the bigger picture for an organization, and it kind of just propelled my career from it. So I suppose the chap that helped me set this up was Graham, really, all those times, all those years ago, which you know, we would never have thought that your journey goes on to that route.
I think just building on that, I think it's actually also, you know, it's a personal decision for everybody to decide, in terms of your own journey, how much of that do you want to manage and how much of that do you want to go with the flow? And that might change in a month and it might change in a year, but you know it's changed. And I think that comes back to that point of reflection. Sometimes you have to make that deliberate, purposeful decision to go and do something. Sarah joined our organization. I work extraordinary amount of hours, but I still volunteer on the board of a trust that runs 30 schools. And that's now kind of 110 million turnover organization. And as a board director of that, I learn every board meeting I go to, as well as contribute. But I made a choice that I'm still going to find that time. I think we all have to make those kind of decisions. Stuff sometimes happens to us by accident, good stuff and bad stuff. But if we want good stuff to happen, sometimes we have to go and make it happen for us a little bit as well.
Yeah. You put yourself out there. You
so.
actually do something out of the norm and something different. And although, you know, we have talked about some of the education sector and even sort of the public sector, like Graham's mentioned in his opening statement, really, this is all transferable for all industry sectors, regardless of what you've done, what you're looking at moving into, or what your interests are. The fundamental basics are very much the same. It doesn't deviate from it. And as long as you're able to kind of back up your statements on certain applications, for instance, then you're on to a winner. You know, there's no, you know, everyone can say, oh, I'm communicative. And you say, okay, well, great, everyone says that. Tell me how. Well, I met people, you know, strangers at a hackathon. We came first, we came second. We operated in 5 different time zones. They all came from different backgrounds. We had our last hackathon, we had French speakers working, French only speakers working with English. We had luckily one of them was able to speak broken English and one was able to speak broken French, and they still did an amazing job. So, you know, you can actually come together with something like this, and it does really make a difference. I don't want you to think that this is just a game that you're playing on the weekend. Your ideas can be put forward to businesses. Your ideas can actually lead to something. We've chosen the industry sector of healthcare for a reason. We need help within that industry sector. We could have chosen anything for our Recruitathon. This is a hot topic right now. The aging population, supply chain, quality assurance, quality control, to make the lives of frontline workers better. And whether or not, whatever background you are from, those fundamentals of being able to make a difference to somebody should still be there. So that's what we're hoping, even from this, from the skills that Graham's mentioned. I think it's really important that regardless of what industry sector, again, analytics, data and analytics is huge. It's a huge management tool. So it's about utilizing that. How can we actually improve processes from that from that area as well. And you know, for what the ideas that you come up with, I'll be learning from. Hopefully it'll be mind-blowing from it.
And I think just to repeat, I'm just, in case there's anything that's useful, I'm just hopping into our labour market analytics bit, which if anybody's got any questions about the healthcare jobs market.
Does actually that could be quite good. Anybody has anybody got any questions on that from your ideation stage? Or if you do have anything, any questions that you'd like to have a look at some of the analytics side, then maybe you could message us on the Slack channel. We could forward that on to Graham. Graham could maybe do a quick search for you, if that would help. I
mean, I'm happy to share the screen now. If you, I mean, you've probably, I don't want to take up all your day, but if you want one, more than happy if you want to have somebody with one question.
Does anybody have any questions about that with the healthcare from your ideation? I know that we've only just not long started with that, but does anybody want to bring up any questions? Maybe it'd be an idea, Graham, that we do this.
Sure, but it just, so this, I'm in at the moment. So is that screen up?
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, I can look at, as a bit of work that I did, for example, so occupations, job postings, industries, can give an industry overview. This is going to be super slow now. So what do we say? Health.
Yeah, healthcare.
Health, human health and social care. That will probably pick up everything. Just in London for now, or just
yeah, for London would be good.
I have to sort of specify. So at the moment, this is kind of, again, at the moment, there's a kind of a forecast. So the time frame is going back and it makes a forecast going forward. You can see based on the, so again, just to give it context, that this is a mix of government data. So it's very kind of core structural, national, local, regional government data, investment data, but also based on job postings scraped across the whole of the country over this period. But you can see there's not going to be many sectors in the UK that, given this COVID situation here, is not showing a downward line. We could look at most sectors and the line is, you know, hospitality, retail, catering, those kind of things. The lines are not positive. Healthcare is something, as Sarah said, an aging population. There's still slight incremental growth. And obviously the forecast is a little bit woolly going forward. But again, 500 and just in London, over 500,000 jobs in healthcare. And that's gone up by 3.5%, or will go up by 3.5% between 2019 and 2027. Average wages of £31,000. So it's a sizable part of the UK economy. The kind of jobs being advertised, nurses, again, we've got a shortage in the UK, but 85,000 employed in 2019. And that was 15% of all healthcare jobs in 2019. Care workers, nursing auxiliaries, medical practitioners, receptionists, 14,000 receptionists. From a gender point of view, healthcare, maybe not a surprise, but perhaps there to be challenged. 80% of nationally in the UK, jobs in healthcare held by women. Age profile, 27, 40, what, combine those two together, 49%, so 50% of people 35 to 55 in healthcare.
Yeah.
But if you have a look at the kind of the gross value added to the UK economy, 14.6 billion.
That's crazy, isn't it?
That's the value of it in the economy. And again, healthcare purchases from these other sectors. So again, as we develop healthcare, they're purchasing from social work, as we'd expect, temporary employment agencies, legal profession, other residential care. And again, you can see the spend in those sectors. So a buoyant health sector is buoyant sectors in these other areas as well. Yeah. So again, if you were looking, and I'm not proposing to, you know, influence anyone's ideation kind of steps, but actually you can make a positive impact on the healthcare sector by impacting on clearly where it spends a large portion, outsources a large portion of its money, you know, and that's London, but actually it might change a little bit if we move somewhere else. But as a good example, and if you, I probably should have just talked about this for 10 minutes.
No, it's perfect. I think the soft skills is key.
But if, for example, you looked at, say, the job postings analytics, which is where I got the previous stuff. healthcare, health professionals, let's say, health associate, health professionals, health professionals. Again, just in London, but in the last December, so you can see here, last 30 days, 1,000 posts, 1,000 jobs were posted. Each of them posted on average 6 times, which is the regional average for all jobs. And each posting took about 42 days to fill. In London, most jobs were average of 33 days before they got filled. Salary, good salaries. And again, the sort of job market over that period, fairly static at the moment, slight shift a little bit. They're the companies kind of recruiting, but are coming back down to the soft skills, hard skills, soft skills, communication at the top again, enthusiasm, management again, innovation again, that self-motivation we talked about, 21st century skills, leadership, customer service. So again, reinforcing those soft skills, 21st century skills. We looked at data analyst and warehousing, healthcare, no different.
Excellent. Thank you, Graham, very much. Yeah, it's perfect. If anybody does have any, if you need any sort of data or research for specific targets to help with your ideation, to help with the backup of some of your statements that you may well be presenting or you need to publish in your project submissions, then let us know. We'll try and forward them on, and if Graham is online, that'll be amazing. We'll get some. Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I'll happily send back. Yeah,
Nakira, yes, absolutely. I'll message you on Slack. That's absolutely fine. No problem. Guys, have a great couple of hours now.
Nice to meet you all, guys.
On the ideation. Thanks, Graham.
No worries at all.
All the best. I'll see you soon.
Take care. Nice to meet you all.